Thank you very much indeed, colleagues. It is 4 p.m. on the 21st of May. Welcome to everyone. I'm Darren Sanders. I'm the Liberal Democrat Councillor for Baffins, North Milton and South Copner, and also the Cabinet Member for Housing and Tackling Homelessness. Welcome to this meeting. Before we begin, just some housekeeping information. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Don't use the lifts. Please assemble at the Queen Victoria statue in Guildhall Square. In order to comply with the fire marshal regulations of the Guildhall Trust, whose building we're in today, anyone who signed in at the reception desk, please sign out when leaving. This meeting is being web streamed, so to the thousands who are watching, hello. This is being live streamed. It is also available, I'm told, on demand as well. So everyone speaking via a microphone, as I'm doing now, will be on camera. That includes those making deputations. I do not believe there are any deputations. There are not. Okay. Members of the press and public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. We do not have members of the press and public here, but it's just useful to know in case anybody wants to get their phone out. Please can everyone use the microphones and remember to switch them off when they have finished. So it is my turn now to make introductions, and I will start on my left with Alison.
Alison Harper, Local Democracy Officer.
Yeah, and then I will go along the back row, my left to my right.
Alan Denford, Finance Manager.
Stuart, I didn't hear a word of that. You may want to move to the next door seat because that's where the microphone works.
I think we got it. Does that sound better?
That's better, yes.
Yeah. Sorry, try again.
Don't worry.
Stuart Lane, Strategic Procurement and Frameworks Manager.
Okay, thank you, Stuart.
Steve Groves, Head of Building Repairs.
Adam Hardwick, Assistant Director of Buildings.
Claire Hardwick, Head of Private Sector Housing.
Mark Fitch, Head of Local Authority Housing.
And then I'll go along the back to my right with someone who I'm told is observing the poor person.
Joel Andrews, Building Repairs Manager.
Then our sole person in the middle row.
James Hill, Director of Housing, Neighbourhood and Building Services.
And then you two, it will be three once the very late person has arrived. You'll be dealt with later. So you could toss a coin, frankly, as who goes first. I don't mind.
I'm already there. Councillor Roman Dent, Copner Ward.
That's right.
Spencer Gardner, Member for Drayton and Farlington.
Thank you. And we have, well, I will deal with the latecomer in a bit, whenever he's decided. There we are. I'll discuss this with you as we go along. All right, don't worry. Okay. So, Councillor Rajesh Ghosh, who is the Labour councillor for Charles Dickens and the Labour housing spokesman, has turned up. So I've done that for you, Raj, and welcome back, by the way. Okay, so for Spencer, Ray and Raj, do you have anything to declare on the items in here? No, neither do I. Okay, good. So item 3 is an update on the damp and mould policy implementation. Who's the lucky... Steve is the lucky person to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. So the purpose of this report is to provide an update on the implementation of the damp and mould policy that was previously approved by you. The background to the report is that you approved the initial damp and mould policy in February 2024, and there was a further update in September 2024. As you're aware, the government have confirmed timelines for implementation of legislation, and that's due to come in October 2025, which will require social landlords to address damp and mould hazards. Precise timings and phasing and full details of the requirements are yet to be confirmed. There have been various reviews in the past 18 months regarding damp and mould. First off, there was the Housing and Social Care Scrutiny Panel that looked at damp and mould for social housing and landlords. Internal Audit did a follow-up audit in August that improved the assurance to reasonable assurance, and we have set up a damp and mould panel that also oversees damp and mould in our properties. So the review for damp and mould over the past year First off was looking at the demand that we've received. So we've received nearly 2,000 damp and mould demands in 2024-25, which, to give an indication, is a significant increase on previous years, nearly double the amount of inquiries that we've had regarding damp and mould. In terms of our performance, the policy states that we would have a surveyor attend within 14 days of it being reported. And the current status of that is 90 plus of those inquiries we would attend within 14 days, which again is a significant increase on previous years. Most damp and mould, the highest cause is condensation, with 77% of cases being the result of condensation issues. And in terms of callbacks, so the policy stated that we would call back residents after 6 months to see if we've resolved the issue, and only 7% of damp and mould callbacks resulted in further contractor appointments to do further work. So hopefully that indicates that there is some indication that we are doing the right sort of work when we're going out to address that. We've done further evaluation on where the occurrences of damp and mould are. And one of the key findings from that is that a particular type of property called easy form, which is a concrete construction, a non-traditional type of building that we own, 16% of those residents living in those properties will encounter damp and mould problems. And so alongside that, we've also got the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund project running. And one of the types of properties that they are focusing on is easy form properties. So significant investment in that, and that includes insulating those properties to a higher level, so that hopefully that would go some way of addressing damp and mould problems in the future in those properties. And obviously we'll be doing some monitoring of that to see if that is effective or not. We utilise all opportunities when we're inside residents' properties, and the asset management surveys have identified only 4% from their surveys of identified damp and mould issues. And in terms of reviewing the different management types and the area offices is fairly similar in terms of the numbers of damp and mould reports in the different areas. But the one that did flag up was in temporary accommodation. Residents in those properties are more likely to report damp and mould, with 13% of them reporting it. So again, that may help us, inform us where we can be more proactive in how we manage those temporary accommodation properties to try and make sure that we're on top of that. The other area we did focus on was where we got residents on waiting lists in our council properties that are on the waiting list because of overcrowding. And what we found was that 26% of those residents had reported damp and mould in the past 12 months. Again, that could be a symptom of being in an overcrowded property, but it does highlight again that we could be more proactive in focusing on those particular types of properties to make sure that we're getting on top of damp and mould issues very early. Overall, in the past year, we'd spent £1.5 million on tackling damp and mould, so quite a significant investment. And in the budget book that was approved this year, a similar sort of figure is allowed within the budget. In terms of communication, we've done quite extensive communication, which probably does link into why we've had more demand the past year. So there's been a number of articles, publicity on the website, in-house talk. We've done articles around making sure not just for people to be able to report damp and mould, but how they can help themselves as well in terms of trying to manage damp and mould within their properties. We've published on our website a video that gives advice to residents about what to do when they see damp and mould and how they can manage it. And leaflets are still widely available to all of our residents. In terms of training, we've trained all of our council, Portsmouth Homes surveyors have attended HHSRS training. We've developed e-learning that has been developed to be available for all staff within the council that do home visits, so that they know what to look for when they're doing those visits. And we are looking at further training opportunities for our staff to further embed their knowledge and skills in terms of being able to identify damp and mould issues. private sector team have also been doing damp and mould work and are also involved in that area. So in the private sector, tenants in private landlords can also report damp and mould issues to their landlords. And where a landlord fails to act, then tenants can go to the council's private sector housing team to investigate. If they investigate, an HHSRS assessment will be undertaken, and the council has identified 2 out of the 76 requests they've had, 2 have resulted in enforcement action where there's deemed to be the highest category, which is a category 1 hazard. In November last year, the private sector housing team worked with Portsmouth Homes team to do a joint seminar for private landlords in the city, where 50 landlords attended that session. And the recording of the webinar was available is available on the council's website, and feedback from those sessions were very positive. In terms of future plans, we will continue to have a damp and mould panel that meets quarterly, and we will obviously look at the legislation and make sure that we're aware of when that new legislation comes in and what the requirements are, and we will obviously review our policies and our processes in accordance with that. The damp and mould panel are also reviewing with the resident repair focus group the leaflets that we currently issue to make sure that they are still relevant and appropriate. And we're looking at further dashboards and heat maps and such like, so that we can get more proactive in terms of identifying where we're going to get damp and mould issues, so that we can be on top of that and not have to always wait for people to report it, and really try and address it before it actually occurs. Housing officers undertaking tenancy update visits and managing residents will also be trained to make sure that they're aware when they're in those properties, that they know what to look for. And we're also looking at e-learning that will be more mandatory for all staff that are going out into properties. That's the end of the report. If there's any questions.
Well, they won't come from me just yet. Authors, Ray, you don't need to put your hand up, but
I put a finger up.
You put a finger up. Yes, okay.
On your last comment there about housing officers, how many of the housing officers have actually done the training, or is that in process?
I think that's more in process. I think at the so I know at the panel we've identified that we do want to get all the housing officers to be trained on that. I haven't got the stats to say how many have actually done it, but the training is available. But it is something that we are increasingly going to monitor, is making sure that everybody has been trained as appropriate.
Do you have any more, Ray? No, that's fine. Raj, anything? No? Spencer, anything? Okay. I have a few questions, and then I'll make some observations. The numbers that you're giving, 4% of asset management surveys have identified damp and mould issues in paragraph 5.8. Return, you have 7% needing extra callbacks. No category 1 hazards have been identified up to March, so I'm assuming that's still the case, given that we're 2 months on. It is still the case. That's good news. How does that compare with other councils, and how does that compare with housing associations? Do you know? If we don't know, that's fine.
No, I don't know, but obviously, that will be for the panel to review, and obviously there will be more data probably being published that we can sort of link into to see where other councils are. Certainly those that have gone through social housing regulator, but at the moment I couldn't tell you an answer on that.
No, that's perfectly understandable here, and in the private sector, the numbers again, Claire, are quite low. I mean, encouragingly low. Is that real, or do you feel that this is that people are doing stuff after the team has intervened?
I think in terms of the statistics that we put in the report, there's 2 different things. There's the direct reports from tenants to us where they're saying that they have a damp and mould problem. Those, I would say, the numbers are quite low and probably not reflective of the true extent of the issues in the sector. It's what's being reported to us, and we know that there are a number of barriers around why tenants may or may not feel comfortable reporting those issues. The other statistic is around the occurrence of category 1 hazards. So when we're assessing a damp and mould issue in a property, it's a very small percentage, less than 1%, are coming out as category 1 hazards, and that's around the way that the current framework works with the HHSRS, which we know has been under review for a number of years now. I was in a meeting this morning, a conference, where they were talking about that work is still underway in reviewing the HHSRS framework. So there may well be a change to how that works in the future, but at the moment, when we're scoring category 1 hazards for damp and mould, it's not a common occurrence for them to come out as a Cat 1.
Yeah, just for clarity for people who may not know, category 1 is the most severe risk to health and safety, and that is real trouble. Category 2 and other categories are slightly less, so people can experience damp and mould, but it won't be a severe risk. But of course they'll think it's a risk, which is perfectly understandable. Is that fair?
Yes, generally we would summarise a category 1 hazard as representing an imminent risk to the health, safety or welfare of the residents. It's not to say that category 2 hazards can't also be an important or serious risk, but there's a clear distinction in the legislation between the two.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Thank you for all that. Just some observations. Firstly, thank you for the update report, colleagues. That's very, very welcome. These numbers, it's no surprise that the numbers of people complaining have gone up, because thankfully a coroner, and it's taken a coroner, has told the government to take damp and mould seriously. And the government has now told everybody else to take damp and mould seriously. And so it's no surprise that people take damp and mould very seriously, and that's understandable. The actual overall figures look very good for an authority of our size, for a landlord of our size. Very good. And that needs to continue, and the pressure needs to be kept on, but obviously we have to do better. The ideal number of damp and mould cases is 0. And I have certainly chucked a fair few the way of the team, both the private sector and the public and the Portsmouth Homes team, because I've been concerned. You note rightly about the issues with temporary accommodation. Again, I've chucked a fair few of those the team's way, and I would suggest that you discuss it with the housing needs, the housing supply team, and the teams dealing with homelessness, to see how we can make sure that nobody who goes into a property faces damp and mould and is presented with a choice of, well, you've got to take a property with damp and mould or you're out. That's not happening. So I would suggest doing some work with that to make sure that there is no damp and mould in properties that we present, even for people in temporary accommodation. And we know about the temporary accommodation crisis that affects us like everyone else, but still, people deserve to live in decent homes. And I know that's a matter I've raised with the housing supply team last night. But overall, this is rather good, I have to say, but we have to keep the pressure up. And if we can get to 0, that is paradise. One final point, I would like to thank the Housing Scrutiny Panel for its efforts in assisting the team in developing this, and I think that sort of robust approach. Scrutiny deserves to be taken seriously. It's not often in councils, but I take it seriously. I know the team does as well, and I'm grateful for their input, because that's made it better. I know the residents will make it even better. So with that, I'm happy to approve this report. Well, note this report. I can't exactly approve it, but note this report, okay? So thank you for that, colleagues. Right, next on the list is a whole raft of new policies. So who is going to deal with the new policies then?
Me, Councillor
Mark.
Sanders.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Good afternoon, thank you very much. So I'm here to present and seek approval for 3 new Portsmouth Homes policies, those being equality, diversity and inclusion, communication and reasonable adjustments, and managing unreasonable behaviour. The 3 policies are shown in appendices A to C, and as I say, they're all for Portsmouth Homes. And just as a way of background, Portsmouth Homes is a registered provider of, and as a landlord of social housing. We retain our own stock and we provide housing management services to about 15,500 tenants and 2,000 leaseholders in Portsmouth, Havant, Fareham, Gosport and Winchester. With the introduction of the Regulator for Social Housing in April 2014 and the consumer standards at the same time, we are now required to have our own policies rather than rely on Portsmouth City Council policies, because we are the landlord and they need to be landlord service policies. So that's one of the reasons why we're presenting the policies to you today. We have had policies in the past, but these are specific and particular to Portsmouth Homes. So the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Policy replicates and includes much of the Portsmouth City Council's EDI strategy, which sets out the approach to improving equality, diversity and inclusion over the 4-year period 2024 to 2027, and includes the mission statement, where we believe and recognise that the diversity of our population is one of our greatest strengths and assets. So the policy reflects that in terms of how we will look after and manage the tenants and residents and customers of Portsmouth Homes, and runs in parallel with the local authority's EDI strategy. The Communication and Reasonable Adjustments Policy is a new policy that we've introduced to ensure that we respond and reflect individual specific needs of our tenants and our customers, in terms of any specific needs they have in terms of their communication needs, and make sure that everyone within the landlord service understands what those communication needs are and delivers a service in line with those. So again, it's really important that we triangulate that data and that information, and that all parts of the landlord service deliver those services in the way that meets our tenants' needs. And then the last policy is Managing Unreasonable Behaviour Policy, which again is really around, we deal with 15,500 tenants, 2,000 leaseholders, at many times in very complex and stressful situations, and sometimes that can lead to either unreasonable or unacceptable behaviour, but we'll work with residents around how we can best manage that and still provide a service to them. So the policy just states how we will work with them, but how we will recognise what we deem to be unreasonable behaviour. All 3 policies have been through our resident engagement policy review group. We've listened to feedback from those residents and we've made some changes to the policies. And in addition to that, we're going to provide summary leaflets for each of the policies for residents to use and be aware of what's included in the policies. And if approved, the policies will be effective from the 1st of June, and we'll do a rollout to all staff that will be responsible for delivering and adhering to the policies. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Mark. Spencer, Ray or Raj, do you have any questions or comments at all? Nope. Okay, I have no questions. You'll be delighted to know, Mark. So therefore, I'll just make a few comments. I want to start with the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Policy and just read out what is actually in the policy. It says equality is ensuring that all our workforce, residents and visitors are treated fairly and given a fair chance as much as reasonably possible. It's about putting things in place to ensure that all have the opportunity to reach the same outcomes. Diversity is about recognising and valuing the individual differences of our workforce, residents and visitors. It offers opportunities to see things differently, to experience things differently, and to make sure we offer services that fits everyone's needs. Inclusion is about involving and embracing all people, regardless of gender, race, disability, or any differences there could be perceived. Inclusivity matters as it makes everyone feel safe, welcomed, valued, and important. An inclusive workplace means everyone feels valued and safe at work to raise issues, come up with ideas, try things differently, and be authentic. And I've not read that in a while in a policy paper. I just read that out, colleagues, because those sorts of things are under threat from some people who basically can't read them. But it's about treating everybody the same because everybody's equal and everybody's different. And I'm delighted that we have that particular policy in this organisation, and long may it continue. So as far as the 3 policies are concerned, I think overall they are essential and I think reflect what we need actually that's not what we need, it's what our residents need, which is just a chance to feel that they know where they're going. And I like the idea of adding a leaflet for each of them. That's very helpful. Because particularly when it comes to unreasonable behaviour, different people have versions of reasonable behaviour who don't believe that. Go into the Housing Needs Advice and Support Service on a Tuesday or a Monday or a Wednesday, and you'll see different people understandably having different issues. So it's about knowing everything up front, frankly. The only issue with regards to reasonable adjustment is whether any changes need to be made as a result of the Supreme Court's decision with regards to the differences between gender and biological sex. I don't think so, as far as our residents are concerned, but that may be an issue for the workplace. And I know the corporate services team are looking at that, because obviously we want to try and make sure we deal with the ruling accordingly. But with those three policies, I'm happy to approve them, if that's okay. Well, I know it's okay. Thank you for that, Mark, very much. This comes to the final bit of today, which is the repairs and maintenance and void policy. Who is leading on that one? Steve.
Thank you. The purpose of this report is to seek approval from Cabinet to approve the repairs and maintenance policy and the void management policy. The background to this is that in Portsmouth Homes we adopted the Vanguard Systems Thinking method and did various interventions back in 2006, and that identified the purpose for the response repair service was to carry out the right repair at the right time, and the purpose for the void service was to provide suitable homes when needed. The Social Housing Regulation Act in 2023 introduced consumer standards that all social housing landlords must meet, and outlined how we must enable repairs and maintenance issues to be reported easily and must set timescales for completion of repairs. Previously, you've approved recommendations for us to review our repairs and maintenance contract scope of service. And the reasons for the review are several reasons, really. First off is budget pressures. At various cabinet meetings, we've outlined the budget pressures that are impacting on the HRA. Primarily, this is due to the age of our stock alongside current and future demands for maintenance of it. New legislation for maintenance represents significant financial burden for us. It is anticipated that this year there will be a £1 million budget pressure on the HRA revenue account for doing repairs and maintenance. The Social Housing Regulator judgment confirmed a finding of C3, and the concern that it had was the approach of not having explicit target timescales for specific repair categories. Alongside that, most of our failure demands are inquiries regarding from residents regarding appointments and the timeliness of those appointments. However, overall, Portsmouth Homes' repair service is well regarded. There is an opportunity to do a service improvement. As I said, most failure demands relate to service provider communication and management of non-urgent appointments. So there is an opportunity alongside doing this scope of service to actually not just about budget pressures, but also to improve the service that we're able to provide. We have a duty to consult, and quite extensive consultation has been undertaken with the residents. Initially, we did a resident consortium repairs focus group meeting in October, where we initially discussed the scope of repair service and what is actually most important to them. And what residents' feedback was the most important aspect of the service is that service providers arrive on time. We did further resident consortium workshop in January, and we got specific feedback on different options that we could incorporate into our repairs and maintenance and void policies. And the feedback is in the various appendices. We also did a workshop with our core group partners, which was primarily focused on how the service that we provide compares to other local authorities, and also we could identify if there was any cost efficiencies that we could gain from changing the service. We then did a duty to consult letter that was sent to all residents and leaseholders that went out in March, and then we collated the feedback, which again is in the appendices. The resident surveys resulted in similar sort of feedback in terms of approval for the policies that we were drafted and sent out. So between sort of 59, 58 and 61% were agreeing with the policies and the process that we were wanting to incorporate. Most of the feedback from the resident survey comments was really about clarification of the policies and the main key feedback was around resident concerns about elderly and vulnerable residents, which and making sure that the new policies take them into account and still have an option for flexibility in those cases. A questionnaire was also sent to all staff within Portsmouth Homes, and that came back with 82% in agreement, well, between 79 and 82% in agreement on different aspects of the policies. Again, the staff feedback was generally positive and welcomed the clearly defined responsibilities that are outlined within the policies. The results of the member survey were that 100% were in agreement with most aspects of the policies, and the only area where there was more split was on the repair categories. And again, it highlighted the concern to make sure that vulnerable residents were accounted for within the policies. And that feedback has been incorporated into the policies to make sure that is made very clear about the flexibility in those such cases. So in terms of the policies themselves, the repairs and maintenance policy introduces repair categories and sets timescales for responses. The policy also introduces that Portsmouth Homes will only attend emergencies repairs out of hours, which is a change to the current service. The repair policies also clearly define what Portsmouth Homes and tenant repair responsibilities and standards are, and outlines in quite a bit of detail where residents are responsible for certain aspects of the repairs and what Portsmouth Homes are actually responsible for. The void management policy is also included within this report, and it really outlines again what our responsibility is as a landlord to maintain the building structure and installations within the property. The change is that to end a tenancy, a tenant will be expected now to give 4 weeks written notice, and a requirement for us to be able to do a home visit and undertake other checks before the tenancy ends. The void policy will also clearly again define what Portsmouth Homes and tenant responsibilities are when moving in and moving out of a property. The reasons for the recommendations is the repairs policies, the new policies will not detract from Portsmouth Homes' core principles for completing the right repair at the right time and providing suitable homes when needed. Most first appointments are currently within 24 hours, regardless of the priority of the repair. And the social housing regulator has outlined that we must set timescales. Consequently, there may be an opportunity to provide a more effective service by having a more planned approach to scheduling routine repairs against capacity of the contractors that are undertaking them. The customer repairs team schedule all appointments regardless of the priority, with no visibility of the service provider capacity. So by enabling the service providers to schedule more of those routine repairs, then they will hopefully be able to get that more accurate and not have to move appointments and make sure that they do turn up on time, which is a key issue that was identified from the resident focus groups. A review of the out-of-hours repair service highlighted that nearly half of our out-of-hours appointments are non-emergencies. This is an additional burden for us to maintain that service and also impacts on capacity during the week for undertaking more routine appointments during normal working hours. Undertaking repairs that other social landlords expect to be the responsibility of the tenant also creates an additional burden on the council when we're providing our repair service. Defining repair responsibilities will enable residents and staff to have a better understanding of what the repair responsibilities are. And residents providing 4 weeks notice and clearer messaging about how properties should be handed back to us will enable us to make sure that we can plan in those voids and the works that are relating to them. It is acknowledged that changing the scope of service has the potential to impact on residents, although the policy clearly states that residents' welfare, health and safety will be our primary concern, and there is flexibility in there about the vulnerable residents as well. There are efficiencies that can be reinvested into the safety and improvement schemes, and it is estimated that the annual efficiency would be £1.85 million per year that we could reinvest into the stock. In terms of the implementation of the policies, residents will have access to the new policies on the council website. We will make information available to all residents when they request and at sign-ups. And staff and service providers will be updated regarding the policies and the changes. We will develop our measures to make sure that we're measuring the impact of the changes on our service and on the residents, and we will continue to engage with the resident consortium about the policy and the effectiveness of them once they've been implemented. We will also work with the resident focus group to develop DIY guides and YouTube videos that can help residents to have a better understanding to do some of the more basic repairs that can become their responsibility. And that is the end of the report, so if there's any other questions.
Okay, Ray, Raj or Spencer, any questions? Ray?
Yeah, just one. I did bring this up before. The no heating, no hot water between October the 1st and March the 31st. There's got to be exceptions where there is medical condition where the tenant actually does require hot water on basically not 24/7, but pretty much. And I know I will give examples, but I won't.
Yeah, again, just to really emphasise that the whole issue around vulnerable, and even though we've got the categories, it's important to understand the individual needs of those individual residents and make sure that we address that. And like I say, that our core principles should still be maintained, even though we've got categories.
Yeah, I knew the answer, but it's for the public to actually know that we are actually looking at that scenario just in case it's misconstrued with the dates.
Anything else, Ray? No. Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for all this, Steve. I would say that point you've just raised, when we've just approved an equality, diversity and inclusion policy, is a reason to have an equality, diversity and inclusion policy, because then that makes you think that everybody is different and everybody is equal. And I'll come back to vulnerabilities in a bit. But colleagues, we're going to get a few of these over the next months and years. I'm sorry about this. We have staved off the nightmare due to changing to systems thinking. But sadly, we're now facing debts like everyone else and deficits like everyone else. Unlike Southwark, we do not wish to sell off council homes in order to pay for it, but it may mean some changes to services, and that's what's going to happen. The multiple threats of more costs, capped rents, and a regulator wanting us to behave more like other authorities that may be less successful for understandable reasons is going to create trouble. So that means there will be things that people won't like, and some of them are in here. Frankly, I'm sorry about that, but that means we can prioritise more money keeping people safe and spending more money on things like fitting kitchens, fixing boilers, and making sure people live okay. I'm delighted that you've taken on board stuff with regards to vulnerability. That's absolutely important, as Ray has just outlined, and I know others have outlined as well. It's absolutely crucial that it's an individual person. Some people may be able to fix a gate or replace a toilet seat, others might not. And we have to make sure we can treat every person as an individual, and that's the most important thing. I think with regards to repairs and maintenance, it's important that it is introduced on day one. We can't have people hanging around, partly because it'll maximise the savings that are made as a result of all this. But also because everybody knows where they're going, and that's a key thing with everything. And one of the things I like about this is it means everybody knows where they're going. All people want to know is the person who's going to do the repair turning up on time? And are they going to turn up when they say they do? Because otherwise you lose trust. And that's, I know from growing up on a council estate, how bad losing trust can be. I remember stories of a repairs person turning up, gently knocking on my mother's door, whilst both of us were in, forgetting that we were in, putting something through the door, and my mother chasing them down the path towards the van. I don't think he recovered. I don't like that happening. Everybody should be straight, and everybody just needs to know where they're going, which is important. I like the idea about particularly stuff I know from the Clarion people who've come on board, who've said, well, why don't you have an app? And why can't we look at things online? And I think that's been a very good wake-up call as a result of the Clarion tenants who've come over, and we're grateful to them for that. The final bit is to try and make sure that we can get out of the current regulatory service judgment that we've got. I don't know if we can, but it's important to give it a go. And so anything that can do to do that would be very, very helpful. I am finally impressed that our tenant satisfaction levels are much higher than those in housing associations, between 10 and 20 points higher, depending on how they are. That says that we have basically a good service that just needs a bit of improvement. There will be people who will be unhappy. I'm terribly sorry about that, but we have to balance up the need to make sure our money comes in and then we can spend more things with trying to provide a decent service. But there will be more to come. So with a little bit of reluctance and hope that we continue to make sure that vulnerable people are treated individually, I approve these policies. And I think that ends the meeting, doesn't it, Alison? So thank you all for coming, and I close the meeting at 4:41 p.m. Thank you.